But we are in Holy Week, and we're talking from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday, and I preached on Palm Sunday, the text in Luke 19. And so we'll talk about that and Jesus riding in on a donkey, proclaiming that he's the victorious king and the one bringing peace. And there's always a little humor in anybody showing up on a donkey.
Especially when it says colt.
Yes.
So there's uh, first
Kirk's
off.
gonna say, "Oh, there we go. He's got a first off."
So he had just finished talking about, I think, the talents, right? People's talents. Well, he was talking because it starts off with after he had said this.
Yes.
He went on ahead. So did the rest of the group hang behind? What was going on? He went on ahead. It doesn't say everybody went on ahead. He went on ahead
To Jerusalem, yeah.
up to Jerusalem. So it is a mountain, right? So you are going up to it. And as you approach Bethphage, which is fun to say, because that's a lot of fricatives, but as he approached Bethphage and Bethany, at the hill called the Mount of Olives, which is a lovely place, by the way, um, he sent two of his disciples. So they caught up to him, I guess, because out of nowhere, two disciples, and he said, "Go ahead of you." I love that part. So first off, he's snuck off. He's wandered off. The crowd followed him. That part doesn't get filled in.
Right.
But suddenly there's folks around who you can delegate to, and he he delegates. Go up the street into the village. You'll find a colt, or the colt of a donkey, or as you say, a donkey. Depends on the translation, but not a horse.
You will find not a horse.
You will find not a horse.
Yes.
Right? So we know it is not a horse, right? He does not get a horse. He does not get a cow. He gets a very small animal that is rideable. Well,
barely.
actually, not yet rideable,
Huh.
which is also significant. And it's tied. It's tied up. Just wander in and grab it. Just go get it. Now, I love this image that they just hey, there's one, right? Just wanders up to somebody's house, unties their colt, donkey, not cow, from whatever post it was tied to. First of all, very rarely, your wife is someone who deals with horses. Your son has run around with a very small horse, also. Very rarely are they just tethered to a pole somewhere, right? They're usually in a pen.
That's true.
Because they're usually with their mom still.
That's true.
So this one, oddly, is tied to a pole in the front yard of this person's house. And these folks come up and untie it. And when the folks who live there look out the window and go, "Hey! What? We just put the horse there. The colt, the donkey, right? We just put it on there. Where are you going? The Lord has need of it."
The Lord needs it.
So, first of all, the Lord. Now, the rest of the neighborhood may not know the Lord. But we don't know what the next words uttered, but they say that and wander off with this animal. And we continue with the story. We don't know if the folks went, thumbs up.
Or just sat there dumbstruck.
Yeah. Oh, okie dokie. For what? Will we be getting it back? Should we follow you? What's going on? None of that. We don't know. But also we don't know, because we never see it listed. Did this colt/donkey get returned? No, we don't know. We don't know. But it gets brought to Jesus. And that's amazing. So it's an animal that has never been ridden on, is not broken in to be ridden on, right? It's not an animal that is in any way used to a human being sitting on it.
Also known as green.
Sure. Yeah.
The only reason I bring that up is because I am now around the horse people, and I hear the horse lingo, and I just felt like throwing it out there.
Excellent. I always considered that green was in reference to the rider, but that's interesting that it would be in reference to the horse or the rideable animal.
Yeah, I mean it's a broken versus unbroken horse,
Yeah.
but a green horse is an animal that has a
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a green colt/donkey has been brought to the Lord per his request. So it also doesn't say which disciples, because I would love to know that part of it, because that
That
might be
would be
funny.
great. Yeah.
But in any case, now Jesus is riding on not a war horse.
Mm.
So as you pointed out in the sermon, right, the people rode horses in to the man of victory, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Triumph. Yeah.
Man of triumph. So people are riding there or being drawn in on chariots by war horses. These are animals who have seen battle
Mm.
and are just as successful in that battle as the human that they're toting,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
In this case, this is a fresh start
Mm.
upon entry. It is different,
Mm.
right?
That'll preach right there. That's good.
Right. So that choice of transport mode is unique.
Mm.
It's small. It is not a powerful animal yet. It's probably incredibly strong-willed and would rather not be doing whatever they're trying to make it. Because what did that look like when they were dragging it to Jesus? Did it go willingly? We'd all like to imagine from the little Arch comic books, the Arch children's books that we read as kids. Chances are low.
Well, likely not.
That they were like, come on, right, the whole way. But maybe it just went willingly. That aside, it's an animal specifically untainted by human discipline and has a clear mind, right? It has no presuppositions about anything yet, which is a really interesting selection to then start the Hosanna parade, right? And another thing I can't not think about when we talk about, at this point in history, throwing down the cloaks and the palm branches to make way, right? You're making way for whoever this is that's coming. So here we have the folks laying their cloaks down, laying palm branches down. Why? To have a clean road to ride in on, because the other modes of transport poop on the road. So this is the not trotting through poop on your way into the city to be triumphant part, right? This is it's kind of amazing and significant. It is a clean way on a clean animal.
Yeah.
This is the man without sin riding in on this thing.
That's good. That's good. Well, and considering that, I could be wrong. So, and I'll say that I mentioned on Sunday, but even what you're saying, corroborates my thinking that the triumphal entry is fulfillment, prophetic fulfillment, Zechariah 9:9, but it's also the imagery I think that Jesus wants us to capture as he goes to the cross, the victorious peace bringing King. And so everything that happens is just rich with imagery of he's telling us what by giving us pictures of what we're supposed to think. It's wonderful. And so so now just thinking of the clean animal, never been ridden on a clean pathway, that's even better. Here's the sacrifice without blemish. So the clean sacrifice on a donkey that's never been ridden on a clean pathway, that's just a great image. Just to think about what it means for Christ to go to the cross. Perfectly innocent. Everything's perfectly innocent and clean, on his way to the cross. That's really good.
It's an amazingly powerful. That whole march, that whole scene is just really amazing. So there's a way to look at it to see it as an event happening too early, right? You could see it as, did this happen too early? Was it an unfortunate timing? Hooray! The crowd. Is it the crowd? Is it actually the crowd that's cheering him? Or if you look at the wording that they use, it mirrors, right? So,
Right.
blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest, which sure sounds an awful lot like a whole bunch of angels who said so to the
Yes.
shepherds, right?
Yeah.
Right. So perhaps though the crowd was making these sounds, it was not the crowd speaking.
Well, because the crowd is nothing but fickle, because as the argument goes, and it's the same crowd that crucified him is the same crowd so yeah,
So by Jesus saying that even if I silence them, the stones will cry out. There are voices shouting this, and they're just using the crowd that's there to make that sound.
it's like was it Romans 8? All of heaven groans, like all of heaven like cries out. That's really interesting.
And I think rather than saying, it's a victory march, hooray, which it is,
Yeah.
right? It's not a job well done landing on the deck of the aircraft carrier a little too early,
Right.
kind of a thing. It isn't that. It is encouragement. It is a cheer, I think, because of what had been fulfilled up to that point, and here we are at the end of the new beginning. Right? We are at that point. The fulfillment is happening.
Yeah.
The part that you've lived these 33 years to complete is about to happen.
Yeah.
So, or,
Huh.
approximately 33 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's still, that part is really interesting to me because it's different than at the baptism by John the Baptist. Heaven opens, dove lands, voice from heaven speaks. Right? It isn't that.
So how would you communicate the differences between that and the Jesus baptism and the triumphal entry? Because that's a really interesting point, because that's the beginning and the end of his ministry, technically.
I mean, depends where you count the wedding in Cana, but yes.
Right, but I mean, you like
Yeah.
yeah. But how would you define the distinction between the?
So, right. So, at the start of it all, at the start of his birth, we get the shepherds being alerted and causing great chaos and noise to go find out. Wise men follow a star, alert Herod, and Herod goes and kills off a whole bunch of kids, which is terrible, but that's what evil guys do.
Yeah.
Who are fantastic builders, but they're otherwise terrible human beings.
Debased, yeah.
Yeah. And then you get to, so we have this announcement. There's an announcement and great joy, right? Heaven is shouting, right? And then we get to the baptism. So now it's going to kick off. Now things are going to get serious for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. Which is amazing. But now it's going to get serious. Baptism by his cousin. And God speaks from heaven directly. So the crowd hears it. And this is recorded, right?
Yeah.
And then we get now to this point where heaven's so overwhelmed with joy at what's about to be accomplished that the crowd that's with him is voicing it. That's interesting. Because I don't think the crowd had been with him until that point, until he went and got the donkey brought to him, right? And they weren't shouting it as they were just walking along.
Yeah, you're right. That's an interesting thought, because is the impetus for them to start shouting that he enters Jerusalem, and they would have, because there would have been a familiarity of the ceremony, the Man of Triumph thing. They would have gotten that, but
In a Roman way.
Right. So in a Roman way, but also in the Roman in the Man of Triumph ceremony, or even in a king actually coming back from war, they would have seen the king from miles away. They would have been prepared for it. They would have gathered at the city. If it was a ceremony to celebrate a victory of the king, they would have known the date and the time. Right. They would have had an understanding of when that. But this is more
impromptu.
Spontaneous, impromptu. And so they just start shouting it. So either they see it. They see Jesus come through the wall. They make the connection, or they're matched with that idea of even if we silence them, the rocks will cry out. That there is a sense of like just
So
this spiritual
he hadn't
reality
entered Jerusalem yet.
before. Oh, okay.
So he's coming near the place where the road
That's,
goes down the Mount of Olives,
oh, that's
which
right.
is
Okay.
it creates a valley to go up to Jerusalem at
Yeah.
that point. So when you go down the Mount of Olives, and the crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. So now they're just shouting out things they've witnessed in great joy, right?
Yeah.
Which is a start. And then this chant of "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, and peace in heaven and glory in the highest," which is amazing. The wording choice there.
It is. Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting to me, and I like that out of this band of people who are now wandering in exuberant. I mean, they're coming down a hill opposite the city wall, right? So the city wall is like Jerusalem is up on a hill, and Mount of Olives is another hill facing.
Oh, okay.
And so they're coming down one hill.
Huh.
Jerusalem's a city, a walled city. It couldn't possibly be silent in there. So how disturbing a noise could that have been?
Yeah.
Yet the Pharisees run out and say, "Hey, keep your guys quiet." Chances are they're thinking, not shut this down. We don't want to know about you or this, but perhaps more nervous that you're announcing kingship in a group in a place run by the Romans.
Right.
This is going to get ugly for everybody.
Yeah.
Or it could be, you can't say this kind of thing or behave in this way headed into the holy city. It could also be, but it's interesting. It's interesting that they try to intercept and shut it down, and that's where Jesus is trying to explain in words that they understand.
Even the rocks will cry out. Yeah.
Even the rocks would cry out. There's a lot of rocks around Jerusalem. That would be incredibly loud.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really rocky in that space.
It's just I wanted to I love that it's not the that's a defiance. I was gonna say it's kind of I love the defiance of Jesus in that moment, appropriately so, but the defiance of Jesus to be like, listen, that's fine if you want him to quiet down, but like
I could silence them, but there's still going to be this.
What's happening cannot be silenced, cannot be stopped. It's too big. So I love that. I love the metaphor. Even the rocks will cry out, and in all creation groaning, and again, and I think it's like in between metaphor and reality. I think because whether all of creation trembles and groans, maybe it shakes, maybe it's an earthquake, because it something's got to give way to give praise. And right now the people are doing it. Awesome. But if they don't do it, Jesus says fine. That's just such a cool moment. I would have loved to have spent the whole message on that. Like just that but I wanted to focus on the Man of Triumph thing. But that picture and just the whole interaction is just so good. Because you recognize that even Jesus is saying what is happening cannot be stopped, and it's bigger than all of us. And it centers around him. That it's not about, it's not this ethereal thing. It's about Christ.
Yeah.
So it's just this really cool statement that's made.
So that part is triumphal in its sense, though, that what the people are saying, the fact that they're shouting out their witness to miracles, how great is, and then yeah. So that is amazing. But then with all that cheering going on, and after telling the Pharisees, hey, I can't stop this, or he could, but I can stop them, but it's gonna happen anyway. Then he breaks into this terrible morose moment, the weight of seeing Jerusalem and saying, if you had only known.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So knowing that he's walking in to his death, which would set them all free, but they won't see it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this actually, that this moment, that they don't see it through him, but it is revealed to them in Acts 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that this moment, I mean, he's doing all this, taking this beating and the ridicule and and all of it up to death as a common person, as a common thief, right? Between common thieves. To be common to us. Right? That's why. That's why I think what makes the symbol of the cross as powerful as it is. It was all of us.
Yeah.
All of us faced that punishment.
Yeah.
And he took it and ended it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. But the revelation of its purpose isn't really like the veil over the eyes of the people was so thick until we get to the second chapter of Acts. And then
there was,
and then as they're all speaking in tongues, then when everybody goes, how do we understand these guys? Aren't they Galilean? I love that part. Aren't they from Galilee? How do we understand them? Which I love that they expect a heavier accent. It's just beautiful. So I mean, at that point we had the crowd speaking on behalf of heaven, or the rocks would have cried out. And at the second chapter of Acts point, the room explodes with, we can't take it anymore, and heaven releases the information finally.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
That there's a delay?
Not that there's a delay, but the way that heaven and earth kind of collide in that sense.
That just even what you said, that heaven can't help but respond. Like there's this real
it's
collision, like you said.
You guys, wait.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I've been doing a lot of reading on humanism, which humanism says that there's nothing beyond ourselves, right? I mean, you know that, but just the idea that humanism says that we live imminent lives, that everything that we can accomplish is within our sphere to accomplish. There's nothing beyond ourselves, and that we've Max Weber in one of his books says that we have disenchanted the culture. So we've taken any kind of enchantment or transcendence out of the culture. Like humanism has sucked all the magic out of the culture, and we've disenchanted ourselves. Which I think I love that. I love that word, disenchant. And so we live these disenchanted lives without transcendence, and we think that everything that we need to do is within our own realm to do that. There's nothing beyond ourselves. But the problem is that now that we've done that, and like that's now that we've kind of done that over the last 200 years or whatever, like it's easy to point to people and say like, man, we want transcendence. We are not satisfied with humanism. Like humanism is not enough for us. It's as a culture. It's just really interesting to see. And so I hear, like, I'm listening to you in how heaven like has to interact with, like heaven has to come to earth. And I think of like our like trying,
or the layer between it has been peeled away.
Yeah, that and you see the reality of what heaven is, and just that the longing for that in our culture, that people want to see more, because we've tried to put the layers back, and as we do so, our lives are like, oh no, we're made for more because we're created in the image of God to glorify and know Him and enjoy Him forever, but. So I just hear the interaction of heaven and earth, and how that's like, even you talking about it, it's like that satisfies the longing of the people to be like, oh yeah, that's where it is, when we get to see the renewal of heaven, the renewal of earth through heaven interacting with the earth, and that's what Jesus going to the cross and so on, and then in the Transfiguration or in Acts 2 at Pentecost. So let's heaven bring a renewal to earth. I just read this statement from Jürgen Moltmann. What a great name.
There aren't enough Jürgens.
There's not enough Jürgens.
Folks, name your kid Jürgen.
Jürgen.
Male or
But
female, doesn't matter.
we just want more of them.
Yes.
But he was talking about how uh, miracles, which is kind of what we're talking about, like just the interaction of heaven into the earth. Miracles are not outside the natural order. In fact, they are the most natural thing, because he says what miracles do is they restore back. And he's not a charismatic at all, or wasn't. I think he's dead. Yeah, he's dead. But he's saying that miracles are the restoration of the natural order and what they're supposed to be. So like Pentecost, the rocks crying out, that's what things are supposed to be like, and we've just made it different. We've kind of put the cap on, right? So I hear that, I'm like, oh, that is like that's a cool thought. Just thinking of the places where heaven interacts with the earth, and like what happens in those moments. Well, the rocks are going to cry out. Like it's too big for us to even be able to cap on it, or that there's going to be wind and fire and flames, and everyone's going to understand each other even though they don't speak each other's languages. That's what it looks like for order to be restored, not for order to be displaced. So just an interesting thought as we're talking about not just the symbolism, but just then what does it look like for the heaven to actually interact with the earth. So it's good.
The other, I mean, as this story progresses, and Jesus weeps over Jerusalem, and then they're praising him. He weeps over Jerusalem, and then wanders into the temple and chases,
Flips tables,
makes a whip and flips tables and kicking butt, taking names. What? Wow, that's a busy day. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean,
let's see. Triumphal entry, check. Weeping over Jerusalem, check. Making a whip and throwing tables, check. Busy.
So the weeping moment, right?
Yeah.
We see it in it on our screens that we're viewing this on, right? It's in red. It is a quote from Jesus.
Yeah.
Somebody heard him say these things and quoted it and wrote it down.
Mm.
So the moment of dread and regret, he didn't mumble.
Mm. It wasn't a private moment. Yeah.
Somebody was next to him and heard it and wrote it down. Right? This isn't went off in sweat, tears of blood, and nobody heard the prayer. This was out loud in front of somebody else who remembered it word for word, or as close as they could. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So then to go from that somber moment into just the how could you possibly be like this? People in the temple, it's just not meant to be this way. Clear it out. And then, as we continue to read, spends the week hanging out, talking to folks,
right,
and just talking things through.
Yeah,
which that must have been amazing. Like especially for the folks who come in with some sort of hardened idea about how life's supposed to go, and to imagine that he was there when the Ten Commandments were given out, and then many subsequent additions were put on, right? Which is, the human end of it. So God gave you 10. You made 9,000, which perhaps might be too many.
I don't know, but maybe you've made too many.
Yeah, we only gave you 10 fingers. Right? We made this simple for you, but on you went.
As you like to do.
Yeah, so it's just interesting that's how Holy Week is spent.
Yeah. Just you'd say just the idea of like it's not like you're right. It's not like triumphal entry, weeping, overturning the temple, and then going right to the cross. There's time that he's just hanging out.
There's time hanging out.
Yeah, John 20. I mean, John 20 is just parable, paying taxes to Caesar, whose son is the Christ, the widow's offering. There's a lot of just parables and discussions, and then it gets in John 22. Then it gets into Passover.
So at this point, they've been in Jerusalem all week. At the Marriott?
Yes, I believe so.
I don't think so.
Sure. Maybe not. Okay,
maybe
yeah.
Not. Where were they? Eventually, they get to the upper room.
Right.
How did they find the upper room? So, if it is the actual place, I have been to the actual place.
Huh.
It's a pretty decent sized room. Hopefully it is the real one. but somebody purports it to be, and lots of tourists go through there on a regular basis,
Sure.
and are told that that is the one. That aside, they find a room and are having dinner in that room for one last time, and that's fascinating to me. Where were they until that point?
Right.
Did they just hang out in the temple, like sleep there? It sounds like it was a decent sized group of people.
Or were they out in the garden? Maybe they slept out in the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, yeah, you're right. I don't know. Who
Garden
knows?
of Gethsemane. I'm not sure I'd want to hang there because all the crosses are just
Oh,
down the
really?
street.
Oh, yeah, but yeah.
That's probably not where you want to hang.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah,
It's a lovely garden, but the chances are low that that's where you'd want to be. But maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Mount of Olives is also quite lovely, but I believe. Yeah, I think it's a Ukrainian church actually that's on the Mount of
really?
Olives. But that aside, where were they sleeping? Did they bring tents? What happened at this point?
Yeah.
We don't get those details. It's just assumed they're housed along the way until we get to the upper room.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
it is.
But yeah, then the upper room. So now we get to the dinner. So food has been purchased. They're going through the Seder meal, right? The Passover meal, which for anyone who's been through a Seder knows it's a really, really long time before you get to eat. But finally, Jesus breaks the bread, and we go through this every communion, right? What happened in that moment. But the significance of how and when and what was done during that time is amazing. In consideration of the meal itself and the significance of the components of the meal. That is interesting. So we break the bread. It's not sharing the meat.
Right.
It's the bread, and it's a loaf designated, right? So that's interesting. And the cup that he pours the wine into, the cup of the Messiah, right? So that's the one he uses for announcing, this is my blood. It's just there's so much there.
Yeah.
It's so heavy, and so many people have spoken and written about it. And every church edifice that you go to has a slightly different take on each part's significance, right? Everybody's staying at the same museum, staring at the same painting, and seeing something slightly different, right? So it's amazing, and clearly very heavy and powerful to remember the time just before. The time just before betrayal, the time just before getting carted away, the time just before praying so hard, sweating blood. And the time just after hanging out, talking in the temple that you just cleared out of money laundering or scammers. I'm sorry, scammers. Right? So the guys charging a little too much for a pigeon and so on, which, wow, like I just that whole scene. The fact that at some point in history the commerce of semi-pure animals, or pure enough animals.
Pure enough.
Right?
Try this one. It's pure
I
enough.
live in an apartment. Where am I supposed to get an ox? Right?
Come to the Pure Enough outlet.
Yeah, that's right. So these are good enough.
Yeah.
It's like that's just funny to me that a business sprung up in the entryway to the temple. Hey, need a sparrow, need a pigeon, like what is going on?
We will charge for anything we can.
Yeah. And so, that's amazing.
And Jesus was called it out. Like, again, he didn't let that fly. He didn't let that slide.
Yeah.
Just that was important enough to the economy of God, and not the commercial economy, but of the order of God, to say, like, this is not how sacrifices are offered.
Right? Is it a sacrifice?
Right. Well, that's a great.
You're rich and you bought yourself one of these.
Yeah.
And you didn't pay anything to raise it. You didn't have any feelings toward it. It wasn't kept apart, made holy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
At your home, these are just random ones that are available for sale, which, they're live still, but they're not the one that was made sacrificial because of your choices. Right?
yeah. So on the note of being kept apart and being kept holy, as for time's sake, we're going to wrap up here, but I'm going to ask you to summarize everything, all of Holy Week and everything you've just said, into a statement about what does that mean for us this week. How do we respond to all this week as we travel through the calendar of Holy Week?
As we travel through the calendar of Holy Week, I think calendar reminders like this are that to me. It's interesting and fascinating and important to remember when these events happen, the order in which they happen, why they happen. But I think it's really important to remember that it's been resolved. He rose from the dead. And so many different groups tried to fight it. That reality.
Right. Yeah.
Following. So in order to live a way, I think that's the way you're supposed to live from now on, right? For as soon as you have accepted Christ as your Savior, that's your going forward.
It's been resolved.
Your life has been redeemed, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? That's amazing. But your life has been redeemed, therefore, live this way all the time. With this emboldened freedom and somber reverence together. It's all one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to hold those intention. That's really good. Well, that'll do it for the Holy Week edition of And Also.
Season 2.
Season 2, Episode 2. And we will see you Friday night for Good Friday service and then Sunday for Easter. Hopefully the power will stay intact for both those services.
Out of how many services has that ever happened?
All of them.
All of the power went out.
All of them compared to the one where it went out.
Yeah,
that's never happened before. Not to me. It's a story for the ages. Either way, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Or you'll see us, I suppose, because they're playing things on YouTube.
That is true.